Right now, Speaker Mike Johnson is scrambling to bridge a major divide among House Republicans over SALT. That's short for state and local tax deductions, which primarily affect blue states. I want to bring in Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York. Hi, Congressman. So the House Speaker is sounding optimistic. He says this can be worked out in the next day or two. Do you think that will happen?
Well, I'm hopeful. We've had some discussions. We're still a ways apart as far as I and my other SALT colleagues are concerned. The fact is that in 2017, SALT was used as a pay-for many of the provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It expires at the end of this year and comes back unlimited. Now, we understand that with it would come the alternative minimum tax coming back in full effect. The standard deduction would be cut in half. So it's incumbent on everybody to negotiate in good faith and come to an agreement. We have been waiting for months for leadership, for Chairman Smith of the Ways and Means Committee to actually negotiate with us over this number. And they waited until the last minute and tried to jam us with a $30,000 number with a $400,000 income cap. That's unacceptable. And we said no very clearly. And so we're going through the process of finally negotiating with leadership to come to hopefully an agreement. But, I look at it very simply. A district like mine, okay, just north of New York City, 3 of the 4 counties that I represent are in the top 16 highest property tax counties in America. And so having an income cap of 400,000 would devastate so many families across my district, and I'm just not going to accept it. And so, we will negotiate and hopefully come to an agreement. But the fact is that as this stands, as currently written, I'm a no.
You're a no. And what do you say to your Republican congressman colleague, Eric Burlison of Missouri, who just criticized you and your colleagues? He says you need to stop complaining and, quote, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I want to get your response.
I respect all of my colleagues, but the fact is, without seats like mine, there wouldn't even be a bill. They wouldn't even have a gavel to write a bill. And so, with all due respect to my colleagues, the fact is we have a very tight margin, unlike in 2017, where they were able to disregard the views of members like me who voted no because of the cap on SALT. They can't do that this time. What we have said from the very beginning is we are willing to negotiate in good faith, but it has to be in good faith and not trying to jam us with a number as they introduce the bill for markup. That just won't work. I won't tolerate it. And good luck getting my vote if that's the approach.
What exactly, though, specifically will it take to get your vote and some of the other Republicans in these blue states, like Representative Lota and so forth? What specific?
Look, I'm not going to negotiate in public, but the bottom line is the number that was laid out that does not address the marriage penalty, that expires after 5 years, that would revert back to 10, is not acceptable to us. And so we are going through the process of negotiating in good faith with the Speaker at this moment, and we'll continue those discussions. But I'm not going to be rolled and I'm not going to be bullied, and I'll have no problem voting no if we can't get to an agreement.
But bottom line, he says he thinks something will be worked out in the next day or two. I mean, do you think that that's realistic?
Well, look, he obviously has this on a fast track to try and get this bill moving next week. So obviously we have a lot of work to do between now and then.
Sounds like not full-throated optimism there that it's going to be done very quickly, but we shall see. Obviously, another thing on the table that's really led to a budget fight is Medicaid. That idea, as you know, making these changes to it, no matter how you frame it or package it, is extremely unpopular with voters. There was this recent poll showing 76% were opposed to slashing Medicaid funding. Does that worry you?
Look, I have been very clear that protecting benefits for eligible recipients is a top priority for me. It's why I fought back against changes to FMAP, why I fought back against changes to per capita caps or block grants or dish cuts. None of that is in the bill. The focus within the changes that have been presented are on eligibility verification, speeding that up from an annual basis to a semi-annual basis, citizenship verification, making sure that illegal immigrants are not taking benefits from those who rely on these critical services and programs like the IDD community. The fact is, in New York, they're spending $1.2 billion on illegal immigrants and Medicaid benefits. That's wrong. And work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents. There is broad consensus both within the conference and frankly across the country that if you are able-bodied without dependents, you should be working to get a job or going to school or volunteering. You should not just be collecting benefits and not engaging in work or other activity. The bottom line is Medicaid is a program to help people in their time of need. And except for those that have long-term needs, like the IDD community, our seniors, children, single mothers, if you're able-bodied, you should be working.
President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill appears to have cleared a key hurdle as Republicans work to advance his sprawling agenda. The House Ways and Means Committee has voted to advance their portion of the tax and spending cuts package after meeting for some 18 hours. I want to go live right now to CNN congressional correspondent Lauren Fox. She's up on Capitol Hill. Lauren, so where do things stand following this committee vote? There's still a long way to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, I'm standing outside the House Energy and Commerce Committee. They're the committee that's responsible for making decisions about some of those Medicaid changes moving forward. They are still going. They've been having contentious debate all night long. We expect that they could go late into the afternoon. Today, their past, their past record for this is 27 hours during that debate over Obamacare repeal back in 2017. So that gives you a sense of where we're going. Meanwhile, the Speaker dealing with a contentious fight from just a handful of New York Republicans who are fighting for a higher deduction for state and local taxes for their constituents. Here's one of those members.
But there's no deal without a true SALT fix, a fix that the president campaigned on when he was campaigning throughout the country and specifically on Long Island back in October 2024 when he called for a fix to SALT. We're willing to put something on the table to ensure that we have the rest of the tax cuts, but it's got to be fair for Long Islanders, New Yorkers, folks in New Jersey and California, because we share a lot of the burden. We're donor states. We send way more to Washington than we get back. I'm a little tired of being lectured about how somehow SALT is a subsidy to the largesse of blue states like mine.
And there's just a handful of members who are fighting for this provision, Wolf, but just to give you a sense of how important it is, it only takes 3 Republican votes to potentially sideline the president's agenda. So those members, very important. They'll continue meeting and having conversations with leadership today. Wolf?
All right, we'll see what happens. Lauren Fox up on Capitol Hill. Thank you very, very much, Pamela.
All right, Wolf, so let's get more on the budget battle and the major headaches the proposed Medicaid cuts are causing for Republicans in swing districts. For more on that, I want to bring in Republican Congressman Jeff Hurd of Colorado. Congressman, great to have you back on the show. You signed a letter with a dozen other Republican moderates urging House leaders to preserve Medicaid. So how will you be voting on this bill as it stands right now?
Thanks a lot, Pamela. It's good to see you again. Listen, I think this is a step in the right direction. We promised that we would protect Medicaid for the most vulnerable populations. That's what we're working hard to do. It's important in my district, making sure that we take care of the elderly, for children, pregnant women, the disabled. I think that we're making steps in the right direction, and as it is right now, I think this is a step in the right direction.
So the total number of people who could lose coverage under this budget, it's unclear. I want to note that. But there's this analysis from the Congressional Budget Office that suggests it could be in the millions. You've said that 1 in 3 people in your district rely on Medicaid. Do you know how many of them will lose coverage under this current budget?
Well, listen, I'm optimistic that we're going to protect the most vulnerable populations, including those in my district. You're right that 1 out of 3 people in my district relies on Medicaid. We need to make sure that we're protecting Medicaid and preserving it for those who need it most, those who are the most vulnerable. That's what I'm fighting for, and I think that's what the Republicans in the Energy and Commerce Committee and in the House are trying to do.
I guess it's also a question, though, of how you exactly define the most vulnerable. I know you mentioned the elderly and pregnant women and that kind of thing, but health policy experts say most people on Medicaid, many people at least, they're already working. And there was this CBO analysis from 2023 that found that work requirements would have negligible effect on employment status or how many hours Medicaid recipients worked. Do you have any concerns that people who really need Medicaid will lose access because of these new requirements?
Well, I would caution people to not read too much into what the Congressional Budget Office says with respect to these work requirements. I mean, we've seen that they've made projections that are not accurate in the past. I think fundamentally most Americans agree that if you need these benefits, if you sincerely are part of that vulnerable population, you should get them. And so making sure that folks have the work requirements in place, I think is something that's sensible. I think most Americans agree. Most people in my district certainly think that that's a step in the right direction. We need to make sure that the people who are utilizing these benefits are the ones that truly deserve it and need them.